Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. This video is where I am going to go over Mars retrograde. And I really want to do a deep dive into what this is reflecting for us right now during this time. But before I do that, I do want to make a special announcement. I know that the seasons can be tough right now and inflation is high, and I just wanted to give a gift to everyone that wants to accept it, which is I am running a Christmas special until December 24th, where you can receive a package of 3 readings for only $155. Usually my package of 3 is I believe $245, which is already discounted. Because if you were to schedule 3 sessions with me and you are a repeat client, that would be $300. So it's really, a hundred and yeah, it's $145 savings that you're getting. So it's basically half off of the original price of the package. So this is something that you can purchase and you can give one of these readings to a friend. You would just have to let me know where you can purchase it for a friend, or you can use all 3. And these readings are where you're able to use them over a span of 18 months. I just felt like it would be a really good time to share this and to connect with community and to help community if you're someone who is wanting to get readings or wants to do a deeper dive. And readings can be expensive. I try to make them affordable. I know that I always try to make everything affordable. I just know what it's like to not be able to afford things. So I wanted to share that with everyone, and I will put a link to my website and to the page where I made this announcement. If you're someone who wants to get these announcements before I make a video and have them sent to your email, if you go to my website and you click forecast and teachings and just click on one of those, it'll automatically pop up to subscribe, and you can put your email in there and get added to the list. So without further ado, let me talk about this Mars retrograde cycle. I want to start by saying, as a recap, Mars is really about the conscious desires that emanate from the soul. So in your own natal chart, you can look at your Mars and you can see what these are and what type of cycle you're wanting to initiate, because Mars is so much about initiation. And in transit, Mars is really this front runner of, in tandem with your chart, speaking to these core dynamics of what it is one is trying to initiate in tandem with their own natal Mars and the aspects that transiting Mars is making to different planets. So I am going to give just an overview of Mars in Leo retrograde, the cycle that's happening, which I wrote down some key dates. The pre-shadow period started October 4th at 17 degrees and 1 minute of Cancer. And the retrograde starts on December 7th at 6 degrees 10 minutes of Leo and ends on February 23rd, 2025 at at 17 degrees 1 minute Cancer as well. And then the post shadow It will exit on May 2nd whenever it reaches back up to 6 degrees, 10 minutes of Leo. So there's this dynamic of Cancerian energy and Leonian energy. So Mars in Cancer was really about initiating these desires to understand one's own emotional dynamics and what impedes upon our emotional independence in a very generalized way. It was about, and will be about, as it retrogrades back into Cancer, really looking at all of the emotional content that gets in the way of one being independent and going for what it wants. So this can bring up a lot of fears, emotional fears, a lack of it can bring up insecurity, a lack of security, in the sign of Cancer. It can drum up fears stemming from prior family dynamics or how one nurtures oneself, and if one is able to inwardly emotionally nurture oneself. It can bring up all types of emotional dynamics whenever you look at it in the chart and where that Mars in Cancer was falling. For me, it was in my second and third house, and so it was bringing things up around my emotional dynamics of being self-sufficient and survival whenever it was in the second house for me. And in the third house, it was around how do I utilize my voice and say what I need to say, and feeling very emotionally insecure with using my voice at that time, dealing with dynamics. We all know, I talk about it. I have a lot of Capricorn. Mine was like family stuff. So you can see how that was bringing up these dynamics in order for me to create security within. So when you look at Mars in Cancer in your own natal chart, it will give you a lot of information about what it is that you are working on, and what it could be. What is the word I want to look for? Triggering within your own emotional dynamics. Like if it's in the first house, it can be around your fear of self-actualizing, or initiating or acting on something that you're desiring to act on. In the seventh house, it can be triggering emotional fears around your relationships with others and codependencies, or I want to be free and I don't want to acquiesce anymore. And so it could it could be that trigger that drums up all of that, the emotional things in the underbelly to surface so that one could cultivate new patterns of emotional awareness. And so whatever was happening back in October, whenever Mars was at that 17-degree mark of Cancer, you're going to have, two more passes of understanding what this is. All right. And it's going to go through those degrees of 17 degrees Cancer to 6 degrees Leo. So wherever the degrees in between 17 Cancer and 6 degrees Leo fall in your chart, this is going to give you a lot of information about the dynamics that are wanting to be brought to the surface, and to understand that the soul is desiring to bring these up in order to cultivate new patterns that are speaking to having courage and for having independence and autonomy. Essentially, we've got to remember that Mars, yes, it's the North Node's ruler right now, but also this is bringing in the past dynamics of that South Node Libra. And we'll get into that whenever we look at the chart for Mars retrograde. And the sign of Leo, where Mars is stationing retrograde and 2 days is where one is needing to creatively actualize their own independence and freedom, and where they are trying to where one might be feeling that things outside of oneself are thwarting them from experiencing that creative potential of independence. It's also where one is needing to understand that their emotional validation needs to come from an internalized level. So they need to be recognized or seen or acknowledged. These Leonian principles that don't have to go into narcissism. Like if we think about Leo as a child, like a child wants to be seen and acknowledged, but at some point we have to grow up and we have to learn how to nurture that within ourselves. So Mars and Leo retrograde can be drumming that up for us. And it can also be where we're needing to reach into the polarity of Aquarius and liberate from those dynamics. It's also about one's own creative potential of blazing a new path, igniting inner ideas so one can feel the freedom and the independence of creative actualization, like the creativity within that. That can be where one learns how to be like a really good leader, how to mirror that. And so there's a need for one to be able to understand that what we do has the potential in a very Aquarian way to help serve the community whenever we're dealing with these dynamics that can be experienced throughout this retrograde cycle. So I'm going to share my chart or the chart for this and point out a couple of things that are happening during this time. So Mars is stationing retrograde in Leo. That means that we have to pull in Aries. It's on the 8th house cusp. We need to pull in Chiron. We need to pull in this North Node, which is stationing at the time. And we also need to pull in the first house energy of Virgo and its ruler, Mercury retrograde, which is essentially they're both trining each other during this time. So Mercury is very activated as well. And then the other dynamic that I just want to pull in food for thought is that Ceres, Pluto, Venus, and this triple conjunction are opposing this Mars and will perfect on January 2nd with that Pluto. Venus at this time is passed over Pluto, so it's in a balsamic phase, whereas it's in a new phase, whereas Ceres is balsamic. And then we also have Neptune, who is stationed direct, right? So let's really break this down. All right. That way we can understand what this is. That chart says December 8th because I used a Greenwich chart, but here in America, in this hemisphere, it's going to be on December the 7th, 6 hours earlier. So at 6:08 p.m. Central Time is whenever Mars is going to station retrograde on December 7th. So this is interesting to think about because we want to look at the totality of this Mars cycle. So Mars and Leo stationing retrograde in the 11th house and technically in opposition to Pluto, Ceres, and Venus and Aquarius in the 5th house. This is paradoxical. So this is really where when we see this kind of dynamic, it's really wanting to integrate the dynamic of both of those signs, those archetypes. So Mars is wanting to initiate the cycle of, and Cancer is on the cusp of that 11th house that Mars is sitting in, all right? So Mars in the 11th house in Leo, retrograde, we could be reliving and re-experiencing in order to resolve key dynamics around one needing to liberate from emotional dynamics of needing to be recognized or seen. This can be where, you have a relationship with someone and you don't feel like they're giving you enough attention or seeing your potential. And so it's really wanting us to, especially whenever Venus is opposing this as well, and Venus is in a new phase to Pluto in Aquarius, Venus being the ruler of that South Node. So this is really drumming up past dynamics of a relational sense of where we're needing to liberate from these dependencies upon others to validate us or to understand us. And with Venus and Pluto and Ceres being ruled by Uranus and Taurus, it's very much about the need to integrate one's own authenticity as a way to fortify and solidify one's inner relationship to self, to become very self-sufficient. And when we're self-sufficient and self-reliant, we're also being emotionally self-sufficient and self-reliant by inwardly nurturing ourselves. There is no need for recognition. And so Pluto can be confronting these dynamics that we thought that we could have worked on around this. This is where we can be re-experiencing something that triggers this prior mental trauma or insecurity within, where we didn't feel like we were special or that we weren't recognized for our potential, or where we didn't feel like we were loved or nurtured in the way that we should have been, whether that be relationships with friends or family or whomever. And so it's really, Ceres here is balsamic to Pluto. So it's wanting to wrap this up for us. And Ceres is about recovering one's nature through, like, we can lose something. Something could end in an instant. Ceres and Aquarius, there can be a loss that's sudden. And all of a sudden, we're needing to recover ourselves through understanding that we can be our own mother. Ceres is so much about nurturing in this mother quality, and it's about mothering ourselves through this process right now. So Ceres will pass over Pluto a few days after, and that's where we get to initiate the cycle of recovery. And then to possibly use these dynamics as potential to help be of service to the community, where maybe we get to shine a light of love and self-respect and dignity in a way that actually perpetuates our own creative independence and potential. We get to show other people that, hey, you can feel inwardly secure within, and you can really nurture and facilitate your inner relationship. And this can be where you're having secure attachment. You could be learning these lessons of having secure attachment and not having to take everything on as, is this my fault? Is the way that this person is reacting to me, they're distancing themselves, they're not talking to me, or they're not doing this. It's about not taking that as something wrong with you, especially others' projections. It's about knowing that that's them and you are you and you're okay. All right. So it's really this dynamic of trying to liberate from all of these prior instances where there were extremes, where we felt we couldn't be independent, and the trauma that is perpetuated, and then where we backslide and maybe acquiesce, and we're so hurt by not feeling independent and feeling that it's thwarted that all of a sudden we just want to belong. And so this is a time where we can be liberating from having to prove ourselves to others. And that's a lot of what Chiron and Aries is just knowing that you already belong, that there's an inner community within. And sometimes we have to do Aquarius and be a group of one if necessary for a little bit in order to recover and nurture that within ourselves to become emotionally self-reliant and inwardly validating. So that way we can really know true sovereignty and independence and self-love. Mars and Leo. With Aries on the 8th house cusp of this chart, it's this kind of double signature of a Plutonian experience of confronting these inner dynamics, of feeling deeply insecure. And I don't know what my identity is right now, or I've lost my identity, or I'm trying to recover it. And it's really getting to the bottom of where we might feel that other people are impeding upon our independence. We're not allowed to be ourselves. And that's also seen with Mercury retrograde and Sagittarius trining that Mars. That's also retrograde. This need to really look at our belief structures and where we've internalized these beliefs that say that we need to be acknowledged, seen, to understand ourselves, to be valuable or to be worthy. And that's just not the case, because that series Pluto-Venus is ruled by Uranus and Taurus, which is about absolutely transforming that inner relationship to self. And that Uranus is retrograde and it falls in the 9th house of that chart. So it's about recovering one's truths, whereas Mercury and Sag is wanting to liberate from old beliefs that have been learned and the need to get to the bottom of that. So it's really pulling in this energy I've been talking about. And with Virgo on the ascendant, ruled by that Mercury, it's speaking to this initiation of purging these dynamics of what isn't quite right, what's getting in the way of feeling freedom and independence, and self-improving in these areas. And as Mercury retrogrades back into Cancer, we're going to be getting a influx of energy that can really bring up the soul's desires of what needs to actually be nurtured and validated on an emotional level within to truly understand how to be emotionally self-reliant and self-sufficient in that way and to not depend on anything. That doesn't even have to be a personal relationship with another. It can be where you're getting your value from over-identifying with work or the things that you do or the way that you show up for the community, right? Virgo can be this humbling effect that says that we do this, we show up, we do the work, and that isn't our identity. It's a service. And our identity lies within how we nurture ourselves from the inside out. So it's really getting us into this pure emotion, and that's Neptune stationing, and it's helping us to dissolve these old dynamics and to heal them. And so we will get 3 passes of this 6 degree, 7 degrees in 10 minutes in Leo mark. All right. That will really help us to self-actualize through our desires of wanting independence and creative expression. The biggest hang up that I see with this is where there can be frustration, understanding, or when we're coming to understand that as we grow and we evolve, that sometimes people want us to stay the same. And they want to impede upon that independence and that freedom because they might be having some type of codependent need for you to stay the way that you've been. And so this is a time where we're self-actualizing through understanding our truths. Remember that Mars is also ruled by that sun in Sagittarius. And it is trining that Mercury, and it is in a first quarter trine. So it's telling us that something is at a standstill here around accessing this creative potential stemming from our beliefs that have been learned, and we're needing to get to the bottom of this. And then the last thing I want to mention is that in this chart, Capricorn is on the 5th house cusp where Ceres, Pluto, and Venus are all being held. And that's really speaking to the need for us to continue this process of Saturn and Pisces direct ruling that 5th house, of restructuring our consciousness through deconditioning from these dynamics of what has been learned, what is believed, what has been valued around our self-worth, our self-love, and our self-respect. So that Saturn is also in the 6th house. So again, this dynamic of improving upon this. And Aquarius is on that 6th house cups, conditioning this, and the need to really objectify and look at the way we've structured things around our beliefs and our ideals that may be being antithetical to creative expression of independence, and the need for us to not over-identify if we have some type of hidden, because it's Pisces in this 6th house, even though it's conditioned by Aquarius, it's this need to objectify the dynamics of where we've over-identified with things that might have felt hidden around sheer shame, fear, guilt, and judgment that has been learned. And so there's this need to dissolve that and to understand that true self-love, Mars and Leo, and true emotional validation and nurturing, Cancer, comes from within. And there's a need to improve upon this. On a collective level, this is really reflecting the dynamic of needing to get to the bottom of why there are exclusionary behaviors going on that are not rooted in inclusivity, and the need for community to come together and to restructure within societies more natural principles that help the whole, and how that can be creative. And there's a need for us to look at how we can nurture and facilitate this process on a larger scale that actually serves the community. Liberating from values and needs that are impeding upon inclusivity. If you want to really understand this, I would go back to that video I did that's titled A Deeper Conversation about Ceres, Venus, and Pluto. And that will help you understand this more on a collective level. But this is really reflecting this need to liberate from the darker dynamics of Leo within the collective conscious right now. So this is your video for Mars retrograde. As Mars is, making other aspects throughout its retrograde cycle, I will definitely be talking about all of this. It's almost as if the South Node in Libra is drumming up things for us to finally really liberate from through confronting them again. And that's Venus in a new phase with Pluto. And that North Node in Aries, which falls in the 7th house, ruled by this Mars retrograde in Leo, is about utilizing this wisdom that we've been learning over the last year and a half about ourselves and the extremes that have played out, and now putting it to work as a way to cultivate new patterns of independence and freedom and sovereignty on a brand new level that is really indicative of self-love. So it's wrapping up these dynamics of where extremes have absolutely played out in our lives. And this can be where, we are liberating from these experiences of where we felt oppressed, or we've been in systems or communities or families that have projected onto us who we should be, or feeling like we have done something wrong because we didn't abide or play by the rules of the structure we found ourselves in because we were trying to be our authentic self, this kind of saggy energy coming up, and the need to really be free for once and for all, and to create the action that is necessary, that is indicative of self-love and freedom of these dynamics. So I hope this helps you guys understand. And again, I will be going over more of this. I hope to see more of you soon, and blaze on in true Mars fashion. Let's definitely act on in a responsible way what it is that we're needing to do to cultivate more self-love and inner security right now.